So here's another silly little video on free will versus determinism and what is wrong with that. And actually, I'll probably do quite a few more of these because it's probably one of the most popular videos. I'm going to take it a different place today and and show you how free will, the whole thing, free will and determinism, exist in the thought world. And they're not part of genuine reality. So let's go there. And let's start off with just seeing if we could define them in the first place. So what is free will? Well, you might use words like it's the opposite of determinism, or free will is choice. But then if I ask you to define those, you'll go back and it's very circular. So let's try to get to something more practical. So a couple weeks ago, I stopped at the casino, and it was an interesting sensation because I dropped my daughter off at school, and I'm like, I wonder if I'm going to go to the casino, like watching to see what I'm going to do. And then I ended up there, and then of course was up quite a bit, and then was down quite a bit, and then had this strange sensation that we have. We kick ourselves, which is a weird image, like us kicking ourselves to say, why didn't I just leave while I was up? And so the idea of free will is like, okay, there's option A and option B. If free will exists, then there's a genuine choice. I really could pick A, I really could pick B. And okay, well, what does that even mean? Because when we get to this, it gets a little bit more difficult to really define it, even with these practical examples. Well, when we look at the thinking machine and what the left brain is doing when it abstracts from the real world and creates these simulated thought worlds that we do all day. I mean, they call it daydreaming for a reason, because half of your day we are in a dream of thinking. And while we're thinking, we are taking and manipulating and altering the real reality into this shadow-like movie that's more pleasing to the ego. And so while we daydream, it seems to satisfy all the ego's needs, whether it's worry or something more positive. And so the thing that creates the idea of free will is thinking itself. And because thinking creates the idea that there were options in the first place. So when I was up, and then I had left after losing all the money, the thinking mind went to work saying, why didn't I just leave while I was up? It creates the image like that was an option. So that creates this possibility in the mindscape that there's free will in the first place. In other words, free will is another story that's being told by the left brain that there was ever another option. And of course, what happens? Regret. So we have rumination and regret, but these all stem from the fundamental workings of the mind creating different simulations. And the different simulation creates the idea that maybe that was a genuine option. And so what happens when we stop thinking? Well, free will evaporates. And you say, okay, well, he sounds like he's going down the determinism road, that we're all just machines. Well, let's look at determinism. What does it mean if we live in a deterministic universe? Well, it means go back to people like Newton. We're just cogs in the machine, and I was determined to leave that casino broke at the very beginning of the Big Bang. So it was all set in motion, and there was no real option. It was all determined that I was going to leave broke, and so that's not so bad. Maybe in that situation, it could make me feel a little bit better. When things go bad, it's always fun to play the determinism idea too. But the point is, determinism is also just an idea. Now, the way Newton looked at it, he said, well, let's look at billiard balls. And so, if you hit one ball, hits another, he brings this notion of causation up. One ball hitting the other caused the other ball to move. Causation is a tricky one too. And some of the people who teach Zen have talked about the illusion of causation, how it's just an idea. Because when you're forced to define causation, how do you do that? Well, one thing caused something else to do something. And this all works, though, to some extent, if we're dealing with billiard balls. Well, what caused me to go to the casino? What caused me to stay even though I was up, and then to keep playing? Because there certainly didn't feel like there was anyone pushing me. It didn't seem like anyone was pulling me. And so we're quite clever as thinkers. And so we've created all these different forces of causation, but they're all hypotheses, which is to say they're all just images of thought. And so if you pick up any psych textbook, what causes our human behavior, you'll never find a chapter on free will. We've pretty much eliminated that. Maybe a small little thing on existentialism, but that's pretty much gone. And so all the causes, it's chapter after chapter of what causes human behavior. The first chapter, the brain causes you to. So maybe I had some lack of dopamine, so I went to the casino to crank up my dopamine. Of course, Freud had it was the past. That something happened in your childhood that caused you to go to the casino. And then there's, past behavior and the behaviorist. And so it's past behavior. And you could even have cognitive therapy, the cognitive people too, that, maybe thoughts of winning caused me to go. But the point is that any psych textbook is nothing more than 10 or 12 chapters of this or that causes our behavior, which is to say, we really don't have it figured out. So even when we become determinists, and even determinism is a hypothesis, because when we say one thing causes another, we're still in the mindscape of the abstract world. We don't really know what we're talking about. It's very difficult, and philosophers have tried this, but it's very difficult for even clever thinking philosophers to come up with exactly what they mean by causation. And so what happens when we stop thinking? Well, quite a bit changes, because we move from the world of abstraction to the real world of very simple sensory experiences of tasting our coffee, or taking a breath, or feeling the sun on our face, and when we're really caught up in reality, High calls this flow. All the thought world ceases to exist. Egos are gone. Time is gone. I may do another video on how time ceases to exist without thinking. But also these eternal questions that keep the mind occupied, like determinism versus free will. It's a trick question. And you could maybe point that out if you're taking a philosophy class. It's a trick question because it only exists in the world of thinking. And the problem here, of course, is that thoughts don't exist themselves.